a tube that apparently had been just laid out and had a big red thing. They spray them with red to mark it as a non-conformance. And the guy just took it and apparently took it to a plane to put on. And John was really upset about that because you can't have any contamination within the tube, because it once, if there is, according to John, it would when it would operate, it would just explode. So I mean, that was, you know, John was really concerned about a lot of different things. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
just the overall lack of
How do you think that they were able to make the argument that they weren't retaliating against him for reporting all of this? And I know companies do this all the time, where they will conflate or make up that there's a poor performance issue or that there's some other issue that has nothing to do with retaliation. But I'm wondering in his case, and just in general, whether you think Boeing will continue to retaliate, whether that's just in the DNA of some of these behemoth companies to, even though it causes a lot of harm down the road, obviously for the public, but also for their shareholders and stock prices. Um, will they stop retaliating? Is it going to be manager by manager? Is it going to be, um, or is it just too infused in their DNA, in their HR and legal departments to say, okay, this person is raising too many concerns, they're a problem. We have to find a reason to put them on leave or terminate them and claim that it's not retaliation and have plausible deniability.
It's a really good question. Um, the way I see it is that Boeing will not succeed if it continues to go down this path they're on, where they're putting production and profits over everything else. It's just not a successful trajectory. I mean, I think it may have worked for them for a little while, but you know, it's just not it's not sustainable. And I think they really need to clean house. You know, David Calhoun testified at the Senate investigative hearing back in, I think it was June of last year. That, I mean, there was an acknowledgement there that retaliation occurs, and when he was asked about, you know, was discipline taken, he tried to say that there had been. You'd have to go back to read or watch the video to see exactly what he said. So I'm not quoting him, but there was this talk about that they were dealing with folks that retaliated, that were retaliating, right, against people. So I mean, I truly wonder the extent of that. I mean, if you're not informing and training your employees on their rights if they're retaliated against to begin with, nobody knows. You know, it doesn't set a good stage for, like, what's retaliation? What does that mean to begin with, folks? And you know, I think all their employees, their legal, their HR, folks on the floor, they all need this training. It's fine to say, you know, we have strict anti-retaliation policies. I mean, that's all Boeing does is say a lot of stuff. But the way I see it is they don't really enact and act on what they're saying. It's just a lot of talk. So I think that's got to change. And the only way I see you can do that is to have, you know, restructuring of the management system. I mean, if people are retaliating against people, they need to get rid of them. If there's been prior complaints where they've retaliated against people, they shouldn't be working there. There's no room for it. There's no excuse to allow that kind of conduct to go on. I mean, like I said, the company, you can make, Boeing will make tons of money even if they abide by the law and not retaliate against people. I think it promotes a healthier work environment. You'd probably have happier workers. You have more productive workers. you'd have workers that aren't scared to speak up when they see a quality issue, and then that helps the company. And if the company takes it serious, and then they look into these quality issues, it could prevent an accident down the road. So there's a lot of things that they need to do to get back on track, and I'm hoping that they'll take some of those actions to do that.
Yeah, and that's such a good line that you just said, that this company will make tons of money even if they stop retaliating against people, they will still make so much money. And that's what always baffles me, that that they still continue to do all of this, because it's not and I think you're right, it has to be a restructuring of the people who have that ethos, who are still in senior leadership positions there. But do you think it will happen, this restructuring?
I hope it happens. I really do hope it happens.
So are there other people who who have just stopped flying, checking whether the aircraft is manufactured by Boeing, and they just choose a different flight provider?
None other than my wife. My wife and I. I mean, it's up to individuals whether or not they feel comfortable or not flying on one. I just personally would prefer to not fly on one. I'm not saying every Boeing aircraft is a problem. It's just that I feel more comfortable on a different airline. As you asked earlier, flying is still the safest means of travel. If you look at the statistics. But the problem is, I think Boeing's running a risk here, because ultimately, there's going to be more and more incidents, because I believe they're engaging in risky conduct. And I mean, like with anything, if you engage in risky conduct, something bad's eventually going to happen, right? And the company just needs to get its act together. Hopefully the new CEO will help see to that. I also think that the FAA needs to be shook up a little bit. I think there's been way too much leeway that the FAA has given Boeing. I mean, the FAA is not a private company. They need to remember they're a regulator. They're not a business partner with Boeing, right? They're supposed to be the overseer to make sure that Boeing's doing what it's supposed to be doing, to comply with the law and keep us safe, right? But they've had way too of a cozy relationship over the years, and I think they've given Boeing way too much leeway to just do whatever Boeing wants to do with no real oversight. And there's been allegations within the FAA itself where the FAA employees were complaining that they were feeling unduly pressured and harassed for speaking up internally. So there needs to be a culture change, not only within Boeing, but within the regulator itself. And they need to investigate stuff thoroughly, and look into allegations that people have. I mean, there was a recent article in the Seattle Times by Patrick Malone, came out at the end of last year. He talked to a number of my colleagues about an issue he had discovered where the FAA, for instance, over a several year period, had only substantiated like 8% of people's safety complaints.
That's insane.
I mean, and there were thousands and thousands of complaints. So I don't know what it is, if there's just a lack of interest in conducting thorough investigations, if it's a lack of manpower, or what. I mean, it doesn't make any sense to me.
Who are who's Boeing's biggest competitor? I guess there's
Oh,
Airbus,
Airbus. Yeah. And you
and
have
then in the U.S., where else are the planes coming from?
there's no, I mean, in the U.S. there's no competitor for Boeing. I mean, you have Cessna and Learjet. Those smaller private planes. There's
It
no.
almost feels like it's a competition or antitrust issue too, that it's just too big to fail, and if they only have one really viable competitor, then and millions of people needing to get on flights, then people are just willing to overlook to an extent, unless something truly blows up, literally.
Yeah, but again, I think it goes to the point that Boeing could still make money, still by putting out a truly quality product. You know,
Yeah.
otherwise it's gonna. I've read airline CEOs are upset at Boeing. Over all this. I mean, rightfully so. But it puts the competitors at an advantage because now Airbus is going to get more orders.
Mm.
Embraer out of Brazil, they'll get more orders. And then Bombardier up in Canada. Those are the real four main players. And then there's a Chinese company that's coming about that wants to start building jets in China. So you can't have like a total hands-off approach just because they're our only real commercial aviation
Of course.
manufacturer. But I understand what you're saying, though. I mean, it's it seems like that people have just said let's just overlook certain things, right? Because you can't interfere with this. But actually, I think that's more harmful than and Boeing is too big to fail, right? It would have it would have global financial implications, right? Tremendous financial implications if Boeing went under, and not to mention it poses a national security risk. So, I mean, the government needs to. I'm sure they realize all this, but they need to do what they need to do to stabilize Boeing and make sure the company stays on track for all of our interests.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's an amazing thing to hear from you. Not that I disagree, but it's like you've seen no one wants them to go under. No one wants that. People just want them to become safer, and they
And
can't. Like you're not saying I want to take down Boeing with these whistleblower claims. You're saying that you there is a world in which it doesn't have to be this combative, and they would still make a ton of money.
that's right. And that's all our clients wanted to see is that Boeing succeed. We're not here to try to take the company down. I mean, that's not the goal here. And I mean, that's what they were trying to do when they were complaining internally, was trying to help the company. I mean, these folks are working in quality. It's their job to like inspect for quality issues and flag them, right? They're doing their job. And when you're being shut down from doing your job, particularly as it relates to quality issues, that's not something I think people would approve of. I mean, again, I don't have aerospace background, but I mean, it's common sense, right?
Well, you've seen a lot representing all these people. And it's
Yeah.
also, I think it applies to so many industries where you feel, I would rather have some delayed gratification in order to know that I'm not going to be poisoned by my food, or, that I'm
Hmm.
not going to, as a consumer, that there are some people checking on things for me.
That's right.
Um, like that just seems, like you said, it's common sense.